Welcome back for another episode of Errant Adventures, the solo actual play podcast where stories are told at the speed of dice. With me, Steve Morrison, your game master and solo player. Now come on, let's grab the dice and see where our story goes. Welcome back for Chapter 32 of Book 1, Meridian. Last time, we see a few vignettes of the crew back on the Gita station while Sejana is away. Repair techs board the Howlin' Wolf and begin working on repairs to the drive. Ayati wanders the station and finds a restaurant for some food. While there, she runs into Resolina Sancher, an old friend from her former naval unit. They catch up, and Rez offers to show Ayati the rest of the station. Meanwhile, Ludin finds a quiet place and begins reading from a religious text hidden in his clothes. An oddity, to be sure, to see a physical book in this age of quick screens, and he's noticed by an old man who wants to hold the book. Ludin rebuffs him, and the man grows upset. The encounter leaves Ludin shaken, and he hurries to return to the ship. Einur spends some time making plans for where they're going to head after the repairs are finished, but eventually he falls asleep and rests. When he wakes, there's a message from Sejana telling him that she's returned. Einur walks into the common room to find Sejana sitting in her usual spot, with a cup of coffee steaming in front of her. She looks at him and nods. He returns the gesture, gets his own cup of coffee, and settles in across from her. She's silent as he studies her, and he chuckles. "You're going to make me ask, aren't you?" he says. A sliver of a smile cracks her facade, and she says, "Maybe you don't want to hear about it." He takes a drink and shakes his head. "If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, but I'm here to listen if you want to share." Sejana shifts in her seat, and he catches the whisper of a wince. Then she says, "We dropped in, there was resistance, we fought our way to the lab, and I used the gas to neutralize the rest of station security. There's not much else to it." He takes another slow drink, not breaking eye contact, and says, "Right. So how'd you get hurt?" "Took a scatter shot to the chest. Well, a couple of them." "Titan's asshole, girl. Are you serious?" He leans forward. "Are you all right?" "I'm sitting here drinking coffee, aren't I?" She shrugs and winces again, this time not bothering to hide it. "My armor absorbed it, just some nasty bruising. I got lucky." There's something in her voice, and he says, "Did everyone make it back?" She shakes her head, and her left fist clenches. The gauntlet. Einur likes to think he knows her well enough at this point to understand she's carrying a weight. "What happened?" he asks. "My fault," she replies. "I walked us into a trap. Got myself and the Decure out of it, but wasn't fast enough to save the other three." She leans back against the wall and closes her eyes. Einur says, "I'm sure you did everything you could." She opens an eye again and looks at him. "You ever lost someone under your command, Captain?" "Zell Temis, Devrin Card, Felicity Ombras, Old Stormguard. I think about them most days." "And if someone told you that you did everything you could, would that make you feel better?" Einur grunts and looks away. Silence lingers for a long time. Then he says, "Don't take this the wrong way, but it's nice to know you're not as cold-hearted as you pretend." Her face doesn't change as she says, "Those Marines didn't deserve what they got. Dying in battle is one thing, but that... She falls silent. There's more that she doesn't say, but that silence causes him to shiver. A muttering comes from the hallway as Luden emerges into the common space, clothes askew and eyes bleary. He looks like he hasn't slept at all. Catching sight of Sejana, he stops and says, "Oh, you're back." As the words slip out, he pales. Sejana strikes him with a look and says, "Don't worry. You don't have to be excited about it." Luden looks like he's struggling between moving toward the coffee or turning and running back to his quarters. Before he can decide, Einur gestures towards the dispenser and says, "You look like hell, kid. Grab a cup and wake up a bit. How was your walk around the station?" "It was fine," he says, obeying the captain and retrieving a cup. "I'll be happy to leave this system behind." "Did something happen?" Sejana asks. "No," Luden replies a little too quickly. He takes a breath and says, "I just am ready to be heading back to Cassida." Einur nods. "That makes two of us." He looks at Sejana, who has returned to resting her head against the wall, eyes closed. Make that three of us. Luden, why don't you settle in and wake up with that coffee? We'll go check on the engines in a little while." Luden nods and slides into a seat in the corner of the room by the hatch. He opens his queue and seems to fall into reading something, sipping from his cup. Einur watches him for a moment, then turns back to Sejana. "Leaving the system shouldn't be a problem. Not with the help you've secured for us." He rubs at a callus on his left hand. "The real question is, do we go straight back to Cassida, bypassing our stop in Equilon, or go ahead and make that trip?" "Cassida needs to know about the Plithan incursion," Sejana says, opening her eyes and fixing her gaze on him. He meets it. "It's 3 days, Luciel. 3 days difference. If we don't make the Equilon stop, we're going to lose money on this venture, and I'm not sure I'll have a job afterward. You won't be on the ship either, and Ayari won't stay without either of us. We'll all have to leave the wolf to someone else's handling. I don't think I can do it." Sejana sighs. The size of the battle group, they're probably not pushing on to Cassida. Not without needing some serious reinforcements. And if Cassida is their objective, why capture Creus? But we don't know what's going on in the other systems. There might be 3 more fleets out there capturing star systems. If Cassida isn't warned, 3 extra days of travel gives the Plith 3 more days to establish a foothold within Cassida's sphere. Do you honestly think the Plith are making a move against the Grand Duke? I need your straightforward, no bullshit opinion on this. I think it's inevitable, with the way they've been expanding. If not now, soon. Sejana rubs her eyes. But will 3 days make a difference? Probably not. But I'm not sure we can risk being wrong about it. You're the captain, Einur. Ultimately, it's your decision. If my fighter was jump capable, I'd be heading back right now, but I'm at your mercy. Not a place you usually are, he chuckles. I've got a couple days to decide. Once we're within jump distance of Equilon, I'll decide if we bypass it or stop. If the Plith jump into this system, however unlikely that may be, you'll have your answer. Einur grunts and stands, looking over at Luden. All right, kid. Let's see what progress they've made overnight. Well, I don't think the Plithan hierarchy fleet is going to come to the Gita system, but let's let the dice decide. Instead of using the regular oracle like I have been, I think I'm just going to roll 2d6, and if the dice come up as 2 1s, well, The hierarchy is going to come a-knockin'. All right, let's roll the dice and see what happens. 2 and a 6. All right, so while our characters don't know it yet, they are safe from the hierarchy, at least for the moment. When last we left Einur and the Howlin' Wolf, he thought it would take about 12 hours to jury-rig their drive to get it working. Obviously, the best solution would be a complete fix, which the Gita may be able to offer, but that's likely going to take a little more time. Let's roll to see if the Gita can provide the necessary parts to repair the drive. We'll go back to the Oracle for this. So let's say that it's likely. 75 or less on our D100 will be a yes. 18. The repair techs have everything they need, and they're working in shifts. I think at a minimum, it'll be 6 hours, plus I'll roll 2d6 to see how many additional hours the repairs will take. Oof, 11 more hours. So it'll be 17 hours total for the repairs. We know it's already been 6 hours, give or take. But with the refinery being captured, I don't know that the Gita can devote any more repair crew to getting the work done faster. So I think it's going to take another day before the repairs are complete. The repair crew may push for a couple extra hours today and then finish the repair on the next shift tomorrow. I've made a little calendar because, well, I just couldn't help myself. And I've been tracking the dates since the beginning of our adventure. It is currently the 13th of Kalim in the 3060th Isk of the Masked Empire, or as some reckon it, 13 Kalim of the 7th Isk post-downfall. Early morning by the rotation of Carnapraxis. However, on Gita, it's the middle of the afternoon, local time. Once the repair crew finish working this evening, they'll have another 7 hours to go tomorrow. So at the minimum, the Howlin' Wolf won't be leaving until tomorrow afternoon or early evening. They lost a couple days due to the misjump, a glitch in time, perhaps, where it only seemed like a few hours for them, but they made the emergency jump from Creus on the 9th and arrived in Gita on the 12th. It's been a busy day. They'll leave the system on the 14th, which would put them back in Cassida on the 20th. If they make the stop in Equilon, assuming everything goes well, that would put them back on the 23rd, a full 14 days since the fall of Creus. Now, I have inklings about what the hierarchy is up to, but nothing's set in stone yet. So how about a good old-fashioned roll on the descriptor and focus tables from our Ironsworn Starforged reference guide to give us a little prompting. 39 and 75. That's exposed shelter. Okay, I think I can work with that. Yeah, I know why they conquered Creus, aside from the obvious reason to advance their holy empire, and I know what their next move is. They need to find some information in Creus, and I think they will eventually, but I think it's going to take some time. So I'm going to roll 2d6 for their efforts. If they get a 12, they'll have found the information they need. 7 ain't going to do it. We'll revisit that later and roll again at a lower difficulty. But suffice to say, the Plith aren't close to achieving their objective yet, which may make a big difference if Einur chooses to head to Equilon. In the meantime, we've got another reunion to get to, so let's get back to the narrative. Sejana watches Einur and Luden leave the common room. It's quiet for a half hour before they return. Luden marches through the space and heads right back to his quarters. But Einur stops and leans against the doorframe. They've got another 10 hours or so of work to finish the repairs, but the good news is she'll be good as new once they're done. And I was looking forward to seeing your jury-rigged solution, Sejana says. She feels Einur's glare, though there's no real heat behind it. Then he chuckles and says, Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to be here another day. Maybe I'll go explore the station a little too. Care to join me? Might do you some good to see what you helped protect. I appreciate what you're trying to do, Captain, but no, she says. Einur nods and turns to leave, but before he can, she says, And thank you. It's what friends do, he replies. Before Sejana can even think about replying, running footsteps sound from the corridor leading to the access hatch. Sejana's hand falls to the stunner strapped to her hip, ready to draw. Ayadi Kaelana bursts into the common space, sees Sejana and rushes over to her, wrapping her in a tight hug. A few seconds turn into a minute, and Sejana finally says, I didn't think I was gone that long. Ayadi pulls away and looks down at her, clearing her throat. Oh, were you gone? Sejana smells a mix of pungent aromas from her and quirks an eyebrow. Have you been drinking? You know how early it is in the morning? It's afternoon, Ayadi replies. It was morning when I started, but not anymore. More measured footsteps approach down the corridor, and Sejana tenses. A woman in a multicolored jumpsuit with short dark brown hair stands awkwardly in the hatch. Ayadi follows her gaze to the woman and says, Sejana, Captain, I want you to meet Resolina Saint-Cher. She's an old friend. Rez, this is Einur Stargleam, our captain, and this is Sejana Lushale. Rez nods to them both and grins. T has told me so much about your crew. It's nice to meet you. Einur steps forward and extends a hand, which Rez shakes. Welcome aboard the Howlin' Wolf. I didn't know you knew someone in Gita, he says to Ayadi. I didn't either until she checks the chrono on her cue. Oh, shit. Several hours ago. She laughs. Well, I was about to head out onto the station, but I could do with another cup of coffee if that means hearing some stories about Ayadi that she'd be embarrassed to tell. Einur replies with a grin, looking expectantly at Rez. The woman smirks. Oh yeah, I've got all sorts of stories. Ayadi groans, but Rez pats her on the arm. Sejana notes the gesture, the familiarity. Despite the time she's spent with the Wolf's crew, she doesn't know much about Ayadi's past beyond her days with the Scout Service. When she checked up on the crew before joining them, she'd found a sealed military file, but cracking it open didn't reveal anything but an unusually early discharge for a promising ensign. Once she got to know the woman, it felt wrong to pry any further into her background without permission. So she left it alone. But her curiosity remained. Pull up a chair, Sejana says. We're all ears. So then, Prinkant Olivar, who is covered in crash foam, says, Someone get me a bloody towel. And T, deadpan, says, Not sure one'll be enough, boss. Laughter fills the room as Rez looks over to Ayadi, who shrugs, wiping tears from her eyes. She picks up her cup of coffee, raises it, and says, To Prinkant Olivar, who made me scrub every inch of that docking bay. The others raise their cups, and a rare rush of nostalgia floods Ayadi as she realizes just how much she missed sitting around a table sharing old war stories. Even Sejana is smiling, which feels like a victory of the highest order. Rez puts her cup down and says, It's been a real pleasure spending time with you all, but I really should be getting back. I've got a shift tonight, and I should probably try to get some sleep before that. The others rise with her, and Einur extends a hand. Rez, it was a pleasure to meet you. Rez shakes his hand, then Sejana's, then turns to Ayati, who says, "I'll walk you out." They head toward the hatch, and as they're walking, Rez says, "Good people. You've got a good crew here." Ayati nods. "They're the best." "They don't know about what happened, do they?" she asks. Ayati remains silent, listening to their footfalls on the deck. "I'm sorry, that wasn't meant to sound judgmental. You've more than earned your place piloting a starship. I just think they seem like they might understand, and you could stop carrying it around with you." Rez rubs her eyes. "I'm sorry." No, you're right," Ayati replies. "They would understand, but they'd also know, and they would see me differently." The exit hatch slides open with a whoosh, and Rez turns to her. "Just think about it. They might view you differently, but that wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. They would just know you better." She gives Ayati a tight hug. "But whatever you decide, it was so good catching up. Don't be a stranger." "You could come with us," Ayati says. "We could use another engineer in tech, and I wouldn't mind having another friend on board." Now, I think there's a small chance that Rez would uproot her life on Gita to travel with the crew of the Howlin' Wolf, but hey, again, let's let the dice decide. So if I roll a 10 or less on the percentile, she will go ahead and make that jump. 84. Rez smiles and says, "That's incredibly generous, T. But I've got a life here. Now that we won't be in conflict with the Skaz, Gita may have a chance to grow and become something new. I'm needed here." "Yeah, that makes sense," Ayati replies, trying and failing to hide her disappointment. Rez hugs her again. "But now you know where to find me. You can stop by any time you're in system, and we'll catch up." Ayati squeezes her back and says, "Well, thanks, Rez, for everything. And if you're ever in Cassida, same, look us up." Pulling away from the embrace, Rez nods, smiles, and says her final goodbyes, walking down the platform into the bustling docking bay. Ayati watches her go and wipes a tear from her eye. Then she smooths her jumpsuit and heads back into the ship. Ludin watches the two women say goodbye from a side passage. He taps his chin in thought. What had they been talking about? What hadn't Ayati told the crew? Perhaps this bore further investigation. It might prove to be leverage he could use in the future. Slipping away down the passage, he returns to his quarters with something new to focus on. He mustn't forget his mission, and perhaps being crewed aboard a merchant vessel will not get him any closer to his goal. But if he's going to leave this ship once they return to Cassida, it could be useful to have a hook in the pilot. A pang of regret starts in his chest, but he quickly closes off that thought. It doesn't matter how kind she's been to him. He is on a holy mission. The next day passes in relative peace. There are celebrations on the station, but the Wolf's crew doesn't attend. Despite invitations from the Gita government, Captain Noble arrived with a personal invitation, but from his demeanor, he wasn't surprised by the refusal. He offered Sejana his hand, which she shook, and wished the crew well. In late afternoon, on the 14th of Kalim, 3060, the Howlin' Wolf departs Gita Station for its burn toward the conduit opening on the edge of the system. Beyond the asteroid field that housed the mining refinery, Gita's one and only jump point resides. Unlike the bustling conduit transfer station of the Cassidan system, the Wolf is the only ship approaching that fold in space that allows easy access to the Celerity conduit. I could make some rolls to see how the astrogation and jump goes, but in this case, I'm less interested in that and more interested in figuring out what Einur's decision is going to be. Are they going to head straight back to Cassida and risk Mr. Zhang's wrath due to a full hold of goods that aren't going to sell for a profit in Cassida? Or do they go to Equilon and lose another 3 days? I think Einur feels a sense of duty to return to Cassida by a direct route, but I think he also knows, based on his interactions with Mr. Zhang of late, that if he shows up with a full hold, having spent most of the profits from the Craeus Hall, he will be out of a job. So I'm going to leave it up to the dice. Because while I have an opinion on what the more dramatic outcome would be, I think it also makes sense for Einur to worry about his job. So we're going to roll the Oracle. And I think 50-50 feels appropriate, with a yes meaning he makes the decision to do his job and go to Equilon first. 15. All right, we're going to Equilon. That means there's another roll I need to make. The 2d6 roll to see if the Plith have found the information they need. This time the difficulty has reduced a little bit, so a 10 or higher will be an affirmative on that they have found that information. 10. All right. The Plith have their answer, and their fleet is on the move toward its objective. Will that intersect with the Wolf? I think it's unlikely, given the time frame of how everything is kind of played out, but it's not impossible. So we're going to say it is 25 or less on the Oracle. 32. So close. All right. The Wolf jumps into the next system a day later. It's uninhabited, so they scoop fuel from the star and make the next jump. This time they drop into Bulis, another fairly uninhabited system, though there are a couple of planets orbiting the sun, albeit a little far away to be comfortably habitable. The Wolf lists one of the planets, Muhani, as having suffered a cataclysmic event about 30 years ago. Most people fled, but those who remain on the dying world scrabble for every scrap that they can. The Wolf passes through a large asteroid field on its way to the sun, scoops fuel, and returns, giving Muhani a wide berth. There likely aren't any space-worthy ships left there, but if pirates did use it as a base, no reason to make oneself a bigger target than necessary. Once they're back to the jump point, they charge the astrodrive and jump back into the conduit, on their way to their next stop, Equilon. A fleet of ships drops out of the conduit, including the blessings of the ancients, and begins to move towards a large field of asteroids. Blessings surges ahead, its drive burning hard as it races before the fleet. Aboard Blessings, Advocate Soral studies the projected display of the asteroid field. It hadn't taken their ground forces long to subdue Craeus and suss out where the shipments of water and minerals were going. Now the fleet had a bead on the location of the secret base, and there was nothing the Cassidans could do to stop them. The Bulis system lies undefended. After all, it seems like there's nothing of value here. A doomed world, a few desperate settlements. Soral smiles to himself, but he knows differently. Located in that asteroid field is Cyprus, a secret weapons research facility operated by Titan Corporation. And very soon, it will belong to the hierarchy. Thanks for listening to Errant Adventures. If you enjoyed the show, please spread the word. And if you want to support the show directly, leave me a review or support me on Patreon at patreon.com/errantadventures. You can also buy me a coffee at ko-fi.com/errantadventures. If you want to interact with me, my handle on all the socials is @ErrantSoloPod, or you can email me at errantsolopod@gmail.com. I also post short fiction and campaign-related materials on my website, errantadventurespod.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the deep, liars.